Good morning once again. And we're coming to the end. Almost. Very close to the end of our reading of Low Magic. It's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. How big your head is. So this morning we're on part 5 of the final full chapter, chapter 13, on the exorcism of Our Lady of Sorrows. And we've gotten to the section of the exorcism itself. And it has a little epigram at the beginning that says, "What an excellent day for an exorcism." And that's a quote from Regan, the possessed Regan from the movie The Exorcist. Mark and I were in a pretty somber mood after Sister Martha left. Mark said he would like to systematically go through the building as he had done previously, and when he was finished would wait for me in the faculty lounge. I told him I would more or less follow in his wake. We conferred for a few minutes in the hallway as we confirmed our respective routes through the school. As the faculty lounge would be our base camp and final meeting place, we agreed that we'd both start there. I waited in the hallway while Mark did his thing. Incidentally, Mark's thing was a Reiki technique that he performed in each of the rooms. When he was done, he went on his way, and I re-entered the lounge and prepared myself for the magical marathon to come. I sat down in the most comfortable chair in the room and put my briefcase on my lap. I closed my eyes, took a couple of deep breaths, and repeated my Ganesha banishing invocation mantra and visualization. Then I reluctantly got up out of my comfy chair, loosened my tie, unbuttoned the collar of my shirt, and fished out the medallion bearing the image of the pentagram and the sigil of Slug Slug. Slug Slug. I arranged it so it neatly hung over my tie. Then I rebuttoned my collar and slid the knot of my tie trimly against my throat. For some reason, I felt it was vitally important for me to appear as professional as possible. I opened my briefcase and again anointed my head with a tiny dab of oil of Abramelin, popped on my yarmulke, clipped my juror's badge hexagram to my shirt pocket, and put on my bishop's stole. For the first time, I noticed the life-size and obscenely gruesome crucifix hanging on the wall near the bulletin board. How could I have missed that? I moved closer to have a better look. Surprisingly, my dark cynicisms regarding the church and Christianity in general disappeared. And for a moment I saw the great G in that ghastly symbol. I looked into the helpless eyes of God and uttered this 33-word oath. I, Tau Lamed, swear by everything I hold sacred that I will not leave this building until I have exorcised the spirits that torment this school and those who labor and study here. That was my oath. Tau Lamed is my ecclesiastical name. I lit the small votive candle and turned off all of the other lights in the room. I then removed my wand from its bag and proceeded to banish, purify, consecrate, and seal the room in the following manner. With the wand, I performed the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram. With the wand, I performed the lesser banishing ritual of the hexagram. I purified the room by sprinkling the four quarters with holy water and announced, "This room is purified with water." I consecrated the room by approaching the four quarters with the votive candle in hand. With it, I drew an equal armed cross in the air at each quarter and announced, "This room is consecrated with fire." I suffumigated the room by approaching the four quarters with burning rosemary, which I kept igniting from the flame of the votive candle that I carried from quarter to quarter on the lid of the saucepan. You were wondering what that saucepan was about, which also served as my ashtray. Returning to the center of the room, I placed the forefinger of my right hand against my lips and took a deep breath, then forcefully expelled my breath as I swept my hand down in front of me and to the side and back of my body as I shouted, "Apopantos kakodaimenos." That's Greek for "away" or "behind me, evil spirits." Upon leaving the newly banished, purified, and consecrated area, I sealed the room by dabbing oil of bromelain on my fingertip and painting a pentagram on the inside of the door, and 3 Tau crosses, that's just a simple T-type cross, on the outside of the door, 1 each on the left, right, and upper doorposts. I did this in imitation of the lamb's blood sprinkled on the doorposts to prevent the angel of death from visiting the Egyptian homes in the mythological children of Israel. As I drew the Tau crosses, I whispered the words, "En nomine Babylon, Amen. Restriction unto Coronzon." The footnote is, I consider these the most powerful words of protection that can be uttered by a magician of my particular religion. For the next 2.5 hours, I systematically repeated these 7 steps in every room and hallway of the building I could access. The second to the last area I cleared in this manner was Sister Martha's office and its adjoining bathroom. I remember thinking she must be a truly good person. Her office was a sane and calm oasis in an otherwise troubled and disturbed universe. I wanted to linger there, but it was getting late, and I knew the most difficult part of the evening was still before me. I sealed Sister Martha's office with 3 sweet cinnamon-scented crosses and crossed the hallway to descend into the feng shui hell of the administrative staff area. The place seemed even more terrible than it had just a few short hours ago. I performed the full 7-part ritual inside each tiny cubicle, pausing to read each dossier. It was very difficult and a little dangerous, wending my way by candlelight through the maze of desks and chairs. After over an hour, the smoke from all the burning rosemary became so thick in that enclosed area that I feared it would set off the smoke alarm system. Mercifully, that did not happen. I came at last to the semi-private office of the vice principal. Here, I would resume the evocation that I had put on ice so many hours ago back home. Like old Mr. Jacobs, the janitor in my vision, I had swept the filth of the entire building into one neat pile. I chose this area for the final showdown for several reasons. First, it had the most room for me to work. Second, all of its walls, including the one with the door and window that opened to the common area, reached from floor to ceiling. It seemed like the nerve center of the problem and a perfect venue to trap the demon. Lastly, I have to confess, I took perverse pleasure in remembering how in my rambunctious school days I had confronted several other obnoxious demons in a high school vice principal's office. Those of my readers who are experienced magicians can imagine my state of mind after spending so many hours of banishing, etc. Even simple ceremonies such as these raise a remarkable amount of energy and require an intense level of concentration just to hold the visualizations in place. I was physically exhausted, yet at the same time psychically energized. Very few times in my magical career had I reached this exalted level of spiritual intoxication. By the time I reached the vice principal's office, the borderline between the material and the magical worlds had essentially vanished. To say I was hallucinating would be an understatement. For hours now, my pentagrams and hexagrams had hung visibly in the air around me, and each time I spat out the words apopantos kakodaimenos, every spirit entity, good or evil, went scurrying off to anywhere in the building that had not been cleared and sealed off by the wild-eyed exorcist. The only place for all this concentrated smutch was to take refuge here. And the air in the room hung thick with the stinking, demonic chum of the entire building. I slapped Slug Slug's little post-it note sigil and triangle on the desk pad of the vice principal's desk and stepped back a few feet. I checked to make sure I was still wearing my yarmulke, my magical juror's badge, and the medallion bearing the pentagram and the demon's sigil. Lastly, I patted the outside of my shirt to assure myself that I was still safely wrapped in my magical circle. Everything being in order, I aimed my wand at the triangle and commanded as before, "Slug Slug, come!" Slug Slug appeared immediately, quietly, peacefully, as if only a moment had passed since our last encounter. A large, handsome Norwegian magpie perched pleasantly upon his yellow post-it note. I marveled at how normal it all seemed. I was almost happy to see him, grateful for his exotic and dangerous companionship amid this cowed and colorless hell of a Catholic school. His presence made the evening come suddenly alive and interesting. Like a fool, I initiated a conversation. "Why do you torment these people?" It answered, "Is it evil for the crow to feast upon the eyes of a dangling knight?" Now, right now, as I'm writing these words, they appear on the page to be melodramatic and corny, like something I pulled from a demonic fortune cookie. At the time, however, they sounded anything but corny. In fact, Slug Slug's response took my breath away. In my fevered brain, the illusion was unmistakable. The demon was describing the doom of the luckless knights of the Round Table, who failed in their quest for the Holy Grail. They were hung from trees like obscene fruit, and their eyes were plucked out and eaten by crows. I didn't answer. At least I didn't make conscious effort to answer. I stood accused by my own tidy spiritual worldview, paralyzed by the paradoxes of my smug philosophy. Indeed, who was I to presume to understand and judge the rightness or the wrongness of the tragedies of Our Lady of Sorrows? Were not little goods and little evils both parts of the great G goodness of the Supreme Consciousness? Had I plumbed the depths of the souls of these people? Had I weighed their infinitely complex karmas, their inherited destinies, and found some profound miscarriage of cosmic justice that only Lon Milo DuQuette could put right? Did I think I was some knight in shining armor galloping down the freeway to save the fair nuns and children? Was my clarity of vision so superior that I could, with ego-driven impunity, tamper with the momentum of life and death of hundreds of people I never met? Indeed, is it evil for the crow to feast upon the eyes of a dangling knight? Why was I here? What really was my motive for doing this? Why was I standing here with my almond wand and my holy water and my magic toys and my purple yarmulke and my pretty bishop's stole? Did I look cool? Did I think all of this was going to look impressive in my magical diary? Maybe I'd even write a book about this someday. These thoughts triggered in my exhausted brain a chain reaction of even more crippling doubts and self-recriminations. All this while the great bird grew more noble and stately as it stared silently at me within the triangle of my mind's eye. But then I realized that he wasn't being silent, that the accusatory voice I was hearing was that of the demon and not of my own inner soliloquy. It was the damned Magpie that tormented me with these thoughts, these ideas, these images. I had to hand it to Slug Slug. This was a classic demonic behavior, and I had fallen for it hard. My concentration had been severely broken, and as soon as I realized what was going on, Slug Slug started to flap his wings and lift himself into the air. I brandished my wand toward the triangle as if I were snapping a whip. Back down, you son of a bitch. Every ounce of will flowed through my extended arm and out the barrel of my wand. It took everything I had to bring the great bird down upon the triangle. The moment his talons touched down, I heard a noise outside in the hallway. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the door to the staff area suddenly swing open. Oh, sorry. was all Larry the IT man could say after barging into a smoky, candlelit room to find a red-faced wizard in a yarmulke and a bishop's stole aiming a stick at a tiny yellow post-it note. I did not move. Neither did I take my eyes off the triangle. With the same strange voice that called forth Slug Slug, I snarled at poor Larry through gritted teeth. "You're going to have to leave, Larry." Larry left. That did it. No more talking to Slug Slug. I didn't care any more why I was doing this. I didn't care whether or not I was here because of my ego or my insecurities or my karma or my duty or my goddamn spiritual quest. Screw my motives. Screw good and evil. I was here doing what I was doing because the universe had conspired to put me in this place. That was enough. The momentum of my life put me here, and I wasn't going to leave until the job was finished. There would be no more attempts to redeem this spirit. I would not fart around trying to cajole, torture, banish, exile, or otherwise attempt to reprogram this monster into an angel of light. I was insanely angry, filled with a rage that exploded from my heart and arm through the death ray gun of my wand. I would not abide its existence for 1 second longer. I took fiendish delight in spitting out the most hideous curse in my arsenal of Solomonic curses. Christios cornfa peripsal amaeos. Let the company of heaven curse thee. Christios rol grey tofklo oive amails. Let the sun, moon, all the stars curse thee. Christios luciftia otofklo pir piripsal amails pujo elpirds dies apala. Od pujo mird ad fat. Let the light and all the holy ones of heaven curse thee, unto the burning flame that liveth forever, and unto the torment unspeakable. Slug Slug dissolved without a squawk. I felt as though my body were set in stone, my arm and wand still leveled at an empty desk. Oddly enough, I did not feel triumphant or even relieved. My overall feeling was that of embarrassment over the fact that I had allowed the spirit to toy with me, that I had not simply annihilated it immediately upon conjuration. I composed myself for a moment or two, then performed the 7-part banishing procedure and sealed the vice principal's office. I took the post-it note triangle with the departed spirit's seal into Sister Martha's bathroom, burned it, and flushed the ashes down the toilet. I packed my gear back into the briefcase and joined Mark, who was waiting for me in the faculty lounge. There's a postmortem to this, which is part 6, and I think we'll take that and finish this up tomorrow. Thank you very much for being part of the reading of this book. It's truly been my pleasure. I hope to see you all tomorrow at the same time. So until then, be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.